Birthdays used to mean something when I was a kid. Balloons, cake, maybe a trip to the zoo if we were lucky. But somewhere along the way, they stopped being about me. Now they were just reminders. Another year gone, still stuck. No husband, no kids, no job. 30-something and living in my sister's guest room like a misplaced suitcase. I told myself this year might be different. A warm spring evening, the smell of roast chicken in the oven, and my niece hanging onto my arm like I mattered. Maybe I'd feel something other than invisible tonight. I had put together most of the dinner myself, picked out the cake, cleaned the house, even set the table with those placemats my sister never uses unless company's coming. It wasn't exactly a celebration thrown for me, but I wanted it to feel like one. For once, people showed up. Not many, just the usual suspects. My sister tried to act excited, all smiles and light chatter. Her husband sat stiff at the table like he had somewhere else to be. My niece was the only one who really seemed happy I was there, hugging me tighter than any birthday wish could. The meal was good. Homemade, not fancy. Conversation danced around me. About my sister's work, my niece's soccer team, an upcoming family trip I hadn't heard about. I smiled through it. I laughed when appropriate. And when I got my gifts, a floral candle, a journal, and some socks, I nodded, thanked everyone, and told them it was perfect. But it wasn't. It felt like sitting in a room where you can hear everyone talking, but you're behind glass. I was there, but not really, like a placeholder. The cake was waiting in the kitchen. I lit the candles myself, even sang the first line before anyone else joined in. My niece clapped. My sister filmed it with her phone. Everyone looked happy. For a second, I believed it. And then he said it. Her husband, my brother-in-law. He wasn't even looking at me, just leaned over and said to my sister, clear as day, "This is her last meal here. She's moving out soon." Silence hit the room like a dropped plate. Everyone froze. I stood there, holding the knife over the cake, the flame from the candles flickering in my face. I wasn't moving out, at least, not that I knew of. No one corrected him. No one explained. My sister looked down at her lap, didn't say a word. That silence was louder than anything he could have screamed. It hit me in waves. The decisions had been made without me. The plans drawn up, the conversations had. Behind closed doors, I wasn't invited into. I wasn't family. I was a favor. I set the knife down, still smiling because I didn't know what else to do, and said I needed to use the restroom. I didn't go to the bathroom. I went straight to the guest room and shut the door behind me. I didn't cry. Not right away. I just sat there, staring at the wall, hearing that sentence loop in my mind like a cruel song lyric I couldn't turn off. This is her last meal here. I'd given up my apartment to help. I'd quit my second job when my sister needed extra hands after her surgery. I'd done school runs, packed lunches, stayed up with a feverish child who wasn't mine. I'd poured every drop of energy into this family, and it had never been mine to begin with. It was never about love. It was about convenience. I remembered the night my sister asked me to move in. She'd cried, said she couldn't do it alone, that she needed me, that I was the only one she could trust. But trust doesn't look like secret plans and whispered exits. Outside the door, I heard laughter again. The dinner had moved on, like I was never part of it. I looked around the room, my books on the shelf, the sweater I always left on the back of the chair, my niece's drawing taped to the wall. All of it felt foreign now. I grabbed a small overnight bag, just enough for a night or two, no idea where I'd go. Maybe a motel, maybe just drive. But I couldn't stay, I wouldn't beg. And as I zipped the bag, I caught my reflection in the mirror. I didn't look sad, I looked awake. I woke up before the sun, not because I wanted to, but because my body refused rest. My eyes had closed sometime around 3, but even in sleep, my mind wouldn't shut off. That sentence from last night kept coming back like a knife twisting slow. I listened through the thin walls, the hum of the coffee maker, the soft clatter of dishes. The house moved on, as if nothing had been said, as if I hadn't stood in front of a cake while my brother-in-law announced casually that I was being kicked out. I made my way into the kitchen. My sister stood at the stove, flipping eggs, her face blank, focused. Her husband sat at the table, newspaper in hand, pretending to read. I wondered if he even felt awkward. I doubted it. Good morning, she said, not looking up. Just like that. Nothing more. I sat down, nodded. The air was too thick to breathe right. There was a plate waiting for me. Eggs, toast, a slice of orange. Everything normal. Every gesture loud with denial. No one said the word birthday. No one said anything about last night. My niece came in last, rubbing her eyes, looking everywhere but at me. She sat down quietly, didn't speak. That told me more than anything. Sometimes, the loudest part of a conversation is what isn't said. After breakfast, I walked out to the garage for something. I don't even remember what. But there they were, stacked neatly by the shelves. Boxes. 3 of them, labeled with my name in permanent marker. I froze. They hadn't been there last week. I would have noticed. I walked back inside and asked my niece gently, "Did your dad move those boxes this morning?" She nodded, then shrugged, then looked away. That was enough. I thought back, just a few days ago. He'd asked if I had plans for the summer, where I might go next. I'd brushed it off then. But now, I could see the shape of it. The exit wasn't spontaneous, it was scheduled. Later, while I cleared the plates, my sister passed by, whispered, "We'll talk soon," and grabbed her keys, heading out the door like her house wasn't bleeding beneath her feet. No, they weren't going to fight me. That would make them the villains. They'd just gently nudge me out, keep their hands clean. I was being handled like clutter, boxed, sorted, removed quietly. I went to the guest room and sat with the journal I got last night. It was supposed to be a gift. Funny how it turned into the only place I could speak freely. I wrote what I didn't dare say out loud. I wrote about the groceries I'd paid for when budgets were tight, the late nights with my niece when she had nightmares, the way I rearranged my own job interviews to help my sister recover. And I asked the question, did they ever see me? Or was I always just a stand-in, a gap filler until life got easier for them? People show you who they are when they think you need them, my grandmother used to say. I kept writing, pages, more truth than I'd spoken in months, but not rage, resolve. I wouldn't confront them yet. That would give them power. No, I'd leave on my terms, with my head held high, with my choices intact. That afternoon, I pulled out my birth certificate, passport, a few key documents, stacked them neatly. I turned on the family laptop in the den, the one I still had access to, and updated my resume. Should have done that months ago. Should have known comfort isn't the same as security. I logged into LinkedIn, found an old coworker I hadn't spoken to in a year, sent her a message, just checking in. Asked casually if she knew of anyone renting a room short-term. I didn't expect much. But making the ask felt like movement. For the first time since last night, I didn't feel like the victim. I felt like someone taking her life back. Before dinner, I was digging through the trash, looking for a receipt I'd thrown out by mistake, and that's when I found it. A folded-up note, torn at the edge, my sister's handwriting. Let's talk Monday when she's out, about how to bring this up. Maybe ease her into it. She won't fight it if we stay kind. I just want her to land on her feet. I read it 3 times. It was dated 2 weeks ago. That was the last confirmation I needed. This wasn't about last night's dinner. This was orchestrated. Soft betrayal, dressed in politeness. I folded the note back, slid it into my journal. After dinner, which I barely tasted, I quietly packed a small suitcase. Just essentials. I tucked it under the bed, my silent protest. Then I walked out to the porch and sat. The sun was setting, casting gold across the roofs. Neighbors watered their lawns. Dogs barked down the street. It all looked so normal. But something in me had shifted. That morning, I woke up boxed. But by nightfall, I had something they couldn't take from me anymore. If they wanted me gone, they'd soon learn. I wouldn't leave quietly. The afternoon light felt heavy, pressing against the windows like a weight. 2 days had crawled by since my birthday dinner, yet the house pulsed with the same rhythms. Coffee brewing, the creak of the old floorboards, my niece's muted laughter drifting from her room. It was ordinary, but I no longer felt ordinary inside it. I moved slower now, careful with my steps, as though every inch of this place had eyes. My mind replayed fragments of that night. Words dropped like stones into silence, and the echo of them still spread through me. I'd stopped waiting for an apology. What I wanted now was the truth. I opened the hallway closet looking for my raincoat. The day was overcast and damp, and I needed to walk, to breathe. Pushing aside scarves and boxes of holiday decorations, my fingers brushed something stiff. A folder, manila, worn at the edges, with my name written across it in heavy marker. My pulse kicked up. I didn't hesitate. I opened it. Inside were neatly printed budget sheets: mortgage, utilities, groceries, and at the bottom, my name, not under income, not under help, under expenditure. Next to it, eliminate. Scribbled in my brother-in-law's handwriting, sharp and familiar. After March, no freeloaders. My hands trembled, but I kept reading. Move date, scratched out. U-Haul quote, penciled in. It wasn't an accident, it was a plan. They hadn't just decided I should leave, they'd scheduled it, calculated me like a cost. I slid the folder back, careful not to disturb the towels hiding it. My chest felt tight, but my face stayed blank. I walked toward the kitchen, meaning to pour a glass of water, and then I heard them. She should have been gone last year, my brother-in-law said, low and clipped. You're too soft. My sister's voice, quieter but sharp-edged. She helped us when we couldn't afford daycare. You owe her some decency. It wasn't love she was defending. It was a transaction. Debts and credits. My existence reduced to chores and favors. You promised, he hissed. After March, she's out. I backed away from the door before they could see me. My heart beat steady but slow, like it knew something my head hadn't caught up to yet. This wasn't my refuge anymore. This was a ledger I'd been living in. I went back to my room, shutting the door with a soft click. No slamming, no words. I sat at the small desk, opened the old laptop, and typed a new document name. Exit plan. The blinking cursor was like a pulse on a screen, proof of life. I wrote fast. Job applications, storage rental, first month's rent. I opened my email and sent another message to my old coworker. Looking for a room. Urgent. Do you know anything? No pleasantries? Just the truth. Then my resume. I added everything I'd done in this house. Childcare, errands, grocery shopping, schedule management. Tasks I'd done without pay, without thanks. Putting them on paper felt like reclaiming something I'd lost. I stood, stretching my stiff shoulders, and went to empty the trash. A crumpled receipt caught my eye. I smoothed it out. A candle shop downtown. Date: the day before my birthday. On the back, in my niece's handwriting. Happy birthday, Aunt M. Crossed out in faint ink. She'd bought me a candle. They'd told her not to give it. I held the receipt like it was fragile. It wasn't just betrayal, it was erasure. Even the small gestures had been silenced. That night, when the house finally went quiet, I lit the candle alone in my room. Lavender. Soft, steady, a clean flame. It flickered against the wall, small but sure, and I watched it burn like it was whispering to me. Even if no one else saw it, I knew I still had fire in me. The house had gone eerily quiet, not the kind of quiet that soothes. This one pressed down on the skin, settled in the bones. I walked slowly from room to room like I was trespassing in my own life. The hallway, the kitchen, the den, familiar layouts, but something had shifted. The air felt heavier. I passed the playroom where Lenny used to keep her science projects. I saw her standing near a new trifold presentation, one that won an award, I remember. But my name was nowhere on it, not even in the thank you section. She glanced over her shoulder and quickly walked away when she noticed me watching. There had been a time when my laugh could echo through these walls without shame. Now even the corners seemed to recoil. Every framed memory on the shelf felt selected to forget me. And somehow, that silence screamed the loudest. I found her near the stairs, backpack strapped on, ready to go somewhere. Her small hand reached for me. It was instinct, natural, like it had always been. But Ivy's voice cut through it like a blade. Not now, sweetie. She didn't even look up from her phone. Lenny's eyes locked with mine. That 1 second told me everything. She didn't understand, but she felt it. The sting, the shame. Like love itself was now regulated. I gave her a soft smile, but my insides twisted. That little girl used to leap into my arms the second I walked in from a grocery run. No hesitation, no worry about timing. That simple connection had been stolen, rewritten. I didn't say anything. I just watched as Ivy led her away like nothing happened. And I stood there, trying to swallow down the lump that wasn't going anywhere. Later, I found myself in the living room, standing in front of that familiar wall. Something was off. I leaned in. There it was. The family photo. Me, Ivy, Lenny, all of us smiling like things had never broken, was gone. Same frame, new photo. Ivy and Lenny on a beach somewhere, arms around each other. No trace of me. I leaned closer, a smudge of adhesive on the mat, a faint fingerprint I hadn't cleaned off last time. They hadn't even bothered to replace the frame, just the people. You don't need to yell to erase someone, just pretend they never existed. I took a breath that didn't fill my lungs, then walked outside. She was tending to her garden. Same gloves, same posture, pretending peace. I didn't speak right away, just stood near the rose bushes she once told me reminded her of our mom. She kept clipping, watering, performing normal. I said, some things remove themselves, some are erased. She froze, just for a second. Not enough for most to notice, but I knew her. That flinch, it landed. She didn't look at me, didn't offer a defense. I didn't ask for one. I walked back inside without waiting. I had no interest in a show. The hours dragged. I sat at the edge of my bed, laptop closed. Lights dimmed. The candle Lenny had picked for me flickered gently, its lavender scent softening the bitterness I carried. Then, something. Outside my window, I heard it. A whisper. My name. Not loud. Not urgent. Just enough to make me freeze. I crept to the glass, pulled the curtain gently. A shadow was walking away. Slow. Deliberate. Gone before I could even raise my voice. But that whisper stuck with me. What they whisper now will determine how loudly I respond. I lit that candle. I felt its promise. The rain tapped softly against the windows that Friday morning, a sound that should have felt peaceful, but didn't. It only reminded me time was still moving, even if I felt stuck in place. The house was quiet in that odd way a place gets when it knows something's about to shift. I sat in the corner of the dining room, coffee cooling next to me, scrolling rental listings on my phone. A printer hummed in the background, spitting out job applications I'd filled the night before. My suitcase sat open by the wall, half-zipped, clothes folded too neatly, like I was packing for a trip, not an escape. Behind a closed door down the hall, Ivy's voice floated through. Not yelling, just tense. "You're not listening to me," she said. He answered, low and annoyed. I didn't strain to hear. I didn't need to. That kind of talk was always the same. I moved quietly, every action deliberate. Toast in the toaster, butter spread edge to edge. I sat at the kitchen table and ate in silence while they kept their distance. No one asked if I needed anything. Maybe they thought ignoring me would make me disappear. Maybe that's what they hoped for. I opened my notebook. The page felt heavier than it should. I started writing. Not a letter to them. Not a goodbye they deserved. Just something for me. Proof that I'd tried. That I had a voice, even if no one in this house wanted to hear it. There was a quote I copied down at the top of the page. Silence is sometimes the best scream. It sat there like a warning and a promise. Late morning, I walked down the hallway, laundry basket balanced on my hip, half focused on whether I'd packed enough socks. That's when I heard it. Ivy's voice again, softer but sharper this time. She's too fragile. What if she does something to herself? Her husband's reply came without pause. She's not fragile. She's manipulative. She's guilt-tripping you. That's what this whole thing is. I froze mid-step. It wasn't just that they wanted me gone. It was how they were painting me on the way out. Unstable, dangerous, a threat. And then, the twist in his voice. I already told your mom and them that she needed space. She's moving on. Said it herself. My stomach dropped. So they'd already rewritten the story. Told the family I'd chosen this, that I needed time, distance, not that I was being pushed out quietly and methodically, erased like pencil marks under a palm. I didn't move for a full minute. The laundry basket got heavier in my arms. Then I turned back down the hallway and shut my bedroom door behind me. The letter I was writing changed that moment. I kept it honest, but I didn't make it kind. I didn't name them, but I made sure they'd feel it if they ever read it, which they wouldn't. I wrote about presence, about pain, about the quiet ways people pretend to love you while unmaking you. I folded it and slipped it into the pages of The Year of Magical Thinking, tucked deep on the shelf. That book had held me once after Mom died. I figured it could hold this, too. No one needed to see the letter. It was mine. I sat back, stared at the ceiling. "You don't get to control my narrative anymore," I whispered. Not like a threat, more like a prayer. That evening, Ivy asked if I'd join them for dinner. Her voice was bright, performative. "We'd love to have you at the table," she said. I hesitated, then nodded. We ate around a table that looked like peace but felt like theater. Her husband asked about the weather, like we hadn't been living in silence for days. Lenny kept pushing her peas in a circle. No one looked me in the eye for too long. Halfway through, Ivy lifted her glass. "We've all had a hard week. Let's try to move forward with love." I nodded again, didn't speak. This dinner wasn't about me. It was about them being able to say they tried. I left the table early, taking just my water glass. I didn't owe them the performance. By midnight, the house was still. I unzipped my suitcase fully and wheeled it softly to the front door. I stood there for a long minute, staring at the wall where family photos hung. One used to have me in it. Now it didn't. Just Ivy, her husband, and Lenny, smiling like nothing had ever been different. My hand rested on the suitcase handle. The rain had stopped, or maybe it hadn't. I couldn't hear it anymore. I wasn't sure where I was going next, but I knew I wasn't staying. The house was too quiet again. But it wasn't the calm kind. It was the kind that holds its breath right before something breaks. After midnight, with everyone asleep or pretending to be, I slipped into the study. That room had always been off-limits, unless Ivy wanted me to sort receipts or fetch printer ink. Tonight, I moved differently. Not like a guest, like someone looking for proof. The desk drawer wasn't locked. That said enough. They didn't think I'd ever look. Or maybe they didn't care if I did. A file lay open. Legal documents, property transfers, bank notifications. My name scribbled across a few, only it wasn't my signature. Not really, just close enough to fool someone not paying attention, but I remembered every signature I'd ever given, and I'd never signed these. Page after page, it became clearer. They'd quietly erased me from everything tied to this house, from ownership to bank access. I wasn't just being pushed out, I was being legally wiped out. A paper slipped from the stack, a mortgage refinance form. The date was weeks ago, right around the time they started getting cold. My chest tightened, my fingers curled the edges of the page. This wasn't just betrayal of trust, it was theft, of time, of name, of place, of everything I thought I had some claim to. I barely had time to register the shock before the door creaked. Ivy stood there like she'd been waiting. "Funny," she said, smile too bright. "You really have nothing left to lose now, don't you?" She walked in casually, like the room belonged to her, and I was just passing through. In her hand, the same file I'd just combed through. "These?" she asked, waving them like confetti. "We already sent copies to the banks, utilities too, just so you're not surprised when you can't log in anymore." I stayed silent. She thrived on reaction. She took a step closer, lowered her voice. "No one's going to believe you. You're not family anymore. And even when you were barely tolerated." She laughed. That part broke something loose in me. The smirk, the confidence, like hurting me had become sport. For a second, I felt weightless, like everything I knew was slipping off my bones. Then it turned to something else. Fire. I didn't yell, didn't move, but something inside locked into place. She walked out, still smiling, like she'd won. I sank to the carpet, file still in my lap. The papers blurred, but I wasn't crying out of defeat this time. It was grief giving way to fury. I thought back to the nights I helped clean that kitchen while they argued, the birthday cakes I baked for Lenny, the endless second chances I kept handing them, praying they'd choose differently. And now, this. No more. I reached for my phone, then stopped. Evidence like this wasn't for rants or impulsive texts. It needed care, strategy. I wiped my face, grabbed my laptop, and opened a new email draft. A lawyer's contact popped up, someone I'd once met through a mutual friend. I attached scans of the forged documents, titled the subject line, Urgent, Forgery Property Theft. Then I called Torin. If there was anyone who could help me dig, it was him. He picked up groggy but alert. "You okay?" "No," I said. "But I'm done being quiet. They forged documents, took me off everything. I need help." "I've got you," he replied. "Send it all. I'll start digging tonight." We went over a list, title searches, property records, account freezes. My voice stayed steady through every step. The storm inside had become something colder now. Focused. I drafted a text to Ivy, not out of emotion, out of intent. "You don't get to accuse me of being nothing. You'll see me now." No threats, just truth. I gathered every page, stuffed them into a folder. I wasn't just leaving anymore. I was preparing to fight. Later that night, passing through the living room, I noticed Ivy's laptop glowing on the coffee table, still logged in. On my email, I didn't touch anything, just took a screenshot. She was watching, monitoring. She thought I was still walking blind. She didn't know. I'd stopped blinking. They built this house by erasing me. I will rebuild from truth. I slid the book from the shelf like I was pulling part of myself out of hiding. The folded note was still there, creased exactly as I left it. Under the dim glow of my lamp, my own handwriting looked foreign, familiar loops carrying words they had never heard from me, gratitude mixed with steel boundaries, a quiet version of myself they never wanted to see. Reading it now, my chest stopped aching and started to feel steady. This paper wasn't just words, it was the only honest record of who I had been inside this house. Footsteps echoed faintly from the hallway. My hands moved quickly, slipping the note back into the spine before the steps grew closer. That little sheet held more truth than all their soft voices and Sunday smiles. It was the one thing they hadn't managed to rewrite. A light knock. The door opened before I said anything. Ivy stood there, shoulders sloped, voice dipped in sugar. "I'm worried about you," she murmured. "This ordeal is too much. We're family. We just want what's best." I didn't blink. Her eyes flicked across my room, looking for cracks. She sat on the bed's edge, tilting her head, almost rehearsed. "I don't want to lose you," she whispered, like it hurt her. I let the silence stretch, weighing the tremor under her words. Concern or control, it all felt the same now. "Concern doesn't undo deceit," I said, my tone even, the first time I'd used it on her. Her mouth stiffened. For a flicker, her expression shifted, a mask slipping just enough for me to see the calculation behind it. She stood abruptly, smoothing her sweater. "I'll give you space," she said, and walked out, leaving the door ajar, a small reminder she never fully left me alone. The door swung wider without a knock. Cal stepped in, heavier, slower, a checkbook dangling from his fingers. "I have an offer," he said flatly, setting it on the blanket between us. "Help to start fresh. You sign some papers, no legal action. We all move on. And you don't take Lenny from us." I stared at the checkbook, then at him. His mouth curved like generosity, but his eyes gleamed with ownership. "You think you can buy my silence," I said. "It's not like that," he replied. "We're trying to help you." "No," I said, my voice calm and low. "You're trying to clean up without getting caught." He leaned in, fingers brushing the cover of the checkbook. "You're walking away from real money. You'll regret it." "I'm walking away from lies," I said, steady. "I'll take nothing that binds me to this." His jaw tightened. He muttered something about me being ungrateful, and left, the door closing harder than he meant it to. I pressed my back against the door until I slid down to the floor. My hands trembled, but my mind sharpened. Anger, betrayal, fear, they tumbled inside me, but under them a quiet resolve grew. Years of self-sacrifice lined up in my memory, each one a small surrender I had made so they could stand taller. "If you valued me," I whispered, "you'd see me, but you never did." I stood. This wasn't a time to collapse. This was a time to build. Rage cooled into a cold kind of clarity. I would speak, but not with tears, only with proof. I grabbed my phone and photographed the note. I thought of every file, every forged signature, every offer. I would turn their game against them. As I slid the note back into its hiding place, my fingers brushed a dark smudge at the corner, a fingerprint that wasn't mine. My breath caught. Slowly, I reached for my camera again and took a photo of the book, the print, the place it sat. Quiet evidence, piece by piece, night by night. They thought I had no record of their trespass. Tonight, I started collecting mine. I returned to the living room under dim light, heart hard and steady. The new photo Ivy placed caught my eye first. A bright, perfect image of her and Lenny smiling, my face missing. I reached up, unclipped it from the wall, and for a moment just held the frame. Then I walked across the room and pulled the old family photo from behind a stack of books, the one where I stood with my mother and sister, arm around them both. I placed it in the empty frame. My breath caught with the symbolic weight of it. I stood firm under the doorway, waiting. Ivy watched from the hallway, surprise stiff in her shoulders. For the first time, I didn't shrink back. I didn't make space for her reaction. I just stood there, a quiet claim. Ivy came forward, voice soft, pretending calm. "Maybe it's better you move out tonight," she said. "We don't want resentment between us." She offered her concern like a shield. I looked at her evenly. "How about honesty instead of hiding it behind concern?" I said. She faltered. Her words caught. She stumbled for something else to say, but stopped. I continued. "Here's your choice. Status quo ends tonight. I either stay on my terms or I leave on mine." The tension in the house cracked. She gasped, eyes wide. I stood, took the papers I brought with me into the room, and laid them on the table. Then I laid out the truth. Forged signatures, transfers made in my name, eviction notices sent to accounts I wasn't allowed to access. "This is my home too," I said. "The legal record proves it." Ivy's face turned pale. Cal shifted behind her, unease in his posture. Outside, neighbors' lights flickered, someone watching. Inch by inch, I was reclaiming narrative, pulling back what they tried to erase. Ivy's fury snapped. She lunged for the documents. I held firm. Cal stepped forward to intervene. At the doorway, Lenny appeared, tears in her eyes. I turned, my voice low. "I fight for you, too." The room stilled. All eyes on me. Her husband froze. Ivy retracted her hand. The silence stretched heavy. Power had shifted. They retreated from the room, eyes full of shock and fear. I closed the door behind them, the old photo back in place. I leaned against that wall, breathing hard. In that moment, I knew I had reopened a door in their world they thought closed forever. The morning light spilled through the curtains like it was the first sunrise I'd ever seen. I blinked awake to stillness. No hushed voices behind walls. No creaks of footsteps avoiding confrontation. Just quiet. A clean kind of quiet. I sat up slowly, half expecting the weight to return, but it didn't. It lingered on the edges, maybe, but not on me. Outside my room, Lenny sat cross-legged on the hallway floor, her backpack slouched against the wall, lunchbox in her lap. She looked up at me without a word. That gaze, it said everything. Hope, fear, loyalty. I knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "Not yet," I said gently. "But soon." She nodded, slow and serious. Didn't cry. Didn't ask why. Just understood. That alone told me we were already changing something. The air in the house felt thinner, lighter. Like grief had packed a bag and left in the night. Later that morning, I drove out to the cemetery, flowers from last week still fresh in the back seat. I parked in the same spot, walked the same gravel path. My mother's name on the headstone still caught my breath, but it didn't steal it anymore. I stood there for a while, not rushing, letting silence do what it does best, pull the words out of you. I stayed too long, I said aloud. Told myself it was for them. Maybe part of it was. But I should have stayed for me. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a little plastic hair clip. Faded pink, missing a prong. She used to clip my bangs with it before school. I laid it gently by her stone. Not a goodbye. A release. A woman 2 rows over paused nearby. She glanced at me, then nodded. Sometimes, she said, we heal by talking to the dead before we can talk to the living. I smiled. Not forced. Not polite. Real. Thank you, I said. She walked on. Back at the house, I didn't pack immediately. I sat at the table and wrote, just a letter, to Ivy, to Cal, nothing angry, no daggers, no blame, just truth. I'm not who I was when I arrived, and you're not who you were either. That door swings both ways now. I folded it neatly and slid it under the frame of the photo I'd reclaimed. Then I walked through the house, one last time. My hand traced the hallway wall. I stopped by the closet door that used to stick, the chipped tile in the kitchen corner, the back screen door that whined like a stray cat. Upstairs, Lenny stood behind the window curtain, watching, her small hand lifted, unsure if she was waving goodbye or just holding on. Outside, I packed slowly, not with urgency, but care, like I had all the time I needed. The driveway didn't feel like an exit anymore. It felt like a threshold. I started the car, adjusted the rearview mirror. No tears this time. Just a woman looking back at herself and finally recognizing the face. As I drove past the diner, I thought of how many times I sat inside and swallowed words. The school where Lenny once forgot her lunch, and I dropped everything to get it to her. The gas station where Cal claimed receipts I never saw. All still standing, but none of them had power over me anymore. Freedom isn't running, I whispered aloud. It's choosing where to stand. An hour later, I pulled into a gravel driveway in a small, quiet town. A modest rental cottage waited, nothing fancy, but honest. I stepped out, key in hand. Before unlocking the door, I paused, looked up at the sky, and smiled. This time it reached my eyes. The key turned. The door opened. Light spilled in like welcome arms.